So, hello. I'm Tara Darkany, and I work for a Bioratna Trust. And I'm really pleased to be joined for a little interview with the Indrajala community in Bethnal Green in London to open up a bit of a conversation around care, which the Bioratna Trust has been looking at from different angles about how do we care for each other. What is our capacity to care for each other as we get older and or unwell? And you five have bravely said that you will have a chat with me about it to get a sense of what conversations you've been having in the community. And I'm particularly interested because there's, until a few weeks ago, you spanned, six of you living in the community, spanning 6 decades. Anita, we can't quite see lying down, not feeling so good, and I'm glad that she's still joining us. And Ruth is away on retreat. But perhaps you could introduce yourselves briefly and say something about how long you've been in the community.
So I'm Padma Leela, and I've been in these communities, four houses next to each other, I think for about 27 years or something. Because I've been in this house 20 years, as my friend tells me. She's the one who remembers.
Thanks, Padmalina.
And my name is Archila Devi, and I've lived in this community for nearly 5 years. No, nearly 6 years now. Yeah, nearly 6 years in October.
Thank you.
I'm Kalyana Bancha, and I've lived here. Well, it'll be 14 years this November.
Thanks, Kalyana Bancha.
Hi, I'm Vishvanta. I've lived here 19 years in this community, but I've been living in communities for about 30 years, I think.
Wow. And Anita, do you like to say anything about how long you've been in the community?
Hello. I've been here. I've been here about 18 months, maybe.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
there's a tremendous range, isn't there? So, well, I heard when I was at an area order weekend, I heard from Kalyana Bancha and Pamela that you'd started tentatively to explore questions around how you would look after each other, what happens as some of you age. Obviously, we're all aging, but some of us will reach an older age before some of other community members. And I just wonder what kind of conversations you've had, even tentative ones.
So we've talked a little bit in the past about sort of, our wishes before the end of life, and have we got our wills sorted, and the living will thing, and do we want a DNR in place and all that kind of thing. And then I think more recently we've focused more on the practicalities of what happens when one of us can't be an active full member of the community, or can't easily manage stairs, or those kind of things. Whether people want to stay in the community, or whether people see themselves getting to a certain point and then having some other care somewhere else, that kind of thing.
Do you have a sense already then? Does some of you have a sense of whether you would want to stay as long as you possibly could, or whether you would sort of be looking for some other situation at a certain point? You know that about each other?
And obviously I think it's different for each of us, depending on where we are in terms of health and age, and whether, how we see the future, the next few years panning out for each of us.
I think for me, having that initial conversation prompted me to, made me realize that I need to think more about that. For instance, the question whether I would want to stay here or not if I couldn't look after myself anymore. I'm not the oldest person in this community, and I'm in quite good health, but anything could happen. I could suddenly get an illness and become more dependent on the others. I've not really thought about it to the extent that I think, oh yeah, I know what I would like. It depends very much on the circumstances as well, I think.
And do you have a sense of your, perhaps this is a separate question, but your capacity of what you'd be willing to offer? It sounds like for yourself, it's not clear yet what you might want to do, depending on your own health. But if one of the community members did need long-term looking after in some way, you don't have to answer this question in front of them either. But I wonder if that's the sort of thing you've mulled over as well, what your own capacity is in terms of caring for each other. Not just to you. I was wondering that about all of you, if you thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't think did we talk about that?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought it would depend really on the circumstances and on who was here and our ability to look after people. I mean, we did think about the stairs question because this property has a lot of stairs, and we thought that there could be a certain amount of shifting of rooms so that it would make it easier for someone that couldn't manage stairs. But there's stairs outside as well, up to the front door.
Ah,
So
yes.
we would have to put in a stair lift or something to get people up the stairs. And of course that we'd involve liaising with our landlords, the London Buddhist Centre. So we haven't actually had any conversations with them about any of this.
Yeah, I'm very conscious of that because I visited your community, and I'm really aware of you've got very steep stairs, and some of you are living right at the top of very steep stairs, not even near a bathroom. So yeah, that could be something that happens as a sort of very practical thing that you need to consider. The moving rooms,
Yeah, we have thought about that. We've even thought about if two of us couldn't manage stairs, sharing a room.
Yeah.
Sharing this room.
Sharing this room because
right next to the kitchen.
This is a really big room, and it's on the same level as a bathroom.
Yes.
We filled in the stairs.
Yeah, there's a sort of dip.
Which you can't do in life.
Oh.
Which we want.
You can't do that if you want to ever go into the basement. You should have like a sheer drop.
Yes.
It sounds like you're
If you like.
We're just getting into the technicalities.
like
How we get to the bathroom.
Sounds like you've got a kindly wish to accommodate each other, in that aspect, certainly. And another practical thing I was thinking of, what if somebody needed care, professional carers coming in, for personal care, and maybe they were coming in 2 or 3 times a day. Does that sort of then start to kind of disrupt your community life, if you're having people kind of come in like that? Or do you think that's something else? You've perhaps not thought about this, I'm just throwing it out there. Do you think that's something you could also have a sense of accommodating?
Well, we haven't thought about that.
No, I mean, I think what that makes me think of is, one of the things that I think a couple of people have said at points is it's also unknown, isn't it? You start to talk about it, and then as soon as you start to get specific, it's like, well, you just don't know what someone's needs are going to be. So it sort of feels quite hard to talk about it until you know what a particular person might need, or what their disability might be, or
That's true.
What we found was when we had COVID and people were getting COVID at different points, and at one point I think there were 3 or 4 people with COVID in the community and 2 looking after them, was that as each person got ill, we quickly adapted and took care of them in their rooms and took trays up and downstairs, and it very quickly evolved into a caring for each other place in this current community. So I imagine if it's an emergency or a long-term chronic situation arose in terms of caring, it would follow the same pattern of discussion and bringing our needs to the table and seeing what was possible. I imagine it would be a case of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that was a bit of a test case, wasn't it? Having COVID and having to look after each other in that situation.
Yeah, and we coped really well.
We did.
Ah,
I think.
that's given confidence about that going forward as well, hasn't it? So I wanted to ask Anita, what's it like for you, even participating in these conversations when you've just turned 30?
Hello.
Just turned 30,
Well,
the one that's not so well just today.
am I in this? Oh my god,
Yes,
I am.
you are.
Oh, you know.
Anyway, well, it's interesting because it's sort of, you know, I've recently like lost two grandparents who were maybe of like an older age than people here, but there's just something about kind of, yeah, like the fact that we have different, like at different ages we tend to have like different needs. Like I've also got a nephew who's like 4, and just like this sort of difference. And I kind of, yeah, I guess I do feel a bit like we're kind of a family. And so there's like aspects of that sort of caring side of, well, that's, you know, like that's sort of what you do, like that's a little bit of like your role as well, like if you are more able to help people, to sort of do that, to sort of help things like go on or something, because it sort of does require like different ages to sort of sometimes take on slightly different roles. So yeah, I guess I've thought about it a bit like that.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine, I can't quite imagine the sort of scenario you said of having carers in 2-3 times a day for someone. I don't know. Yeah, there's something about that that just seems like, yeah, I don't know.
We didn't think about that,
I
did
didn't
we?
really thought about that.
Yeah.
Like when we said about what stuff would be fine, you know, like I feel like if one person was quite unwell, like, you know, we could just make food for them. Like they don't need to worry about like washing and cooking or anything. Just they could just do the daily life stuff that they need or something. But because I feel like there are all these little tasks that we do as a group. But then, yeah, I don't know what would happen if it's beyond just sort of the normal community stuff, because in a way we have never had that. I don't know what it would be like, or if the person would feel uncomfortable with that level of like support from people.
Yeah, when it goes into the territory of personal care.
Yeah.
Can I say something? Yes. But I realize I keep thinking about these things as if from this day it's like this, and then all of a sudden someone is very ill, but it's probably more likely that gradually someone, or it's quite possible that it's more like gradually someone is less and less able to do things. So then you just sort of grow into it, and last week Vishwantra said, you know, we need to keep communicating about these things, and we also need to be very honest with each other about what we think we can and cannot offer. So it may be a case that you start with looking after someone, and then there comes a point where you realize, actually, no, this is no longer feasible, and then you take the next step, something like that.
And we also thought that just to keep it in mind and to talk about it from time to time on one of our community evenings. That was your idea, wasn't it? And that we would need to be really honest. I mean, it's likely that I'm going to be the one that deteriorates first because I'm the oldest. You know, I'm 74 now, so, you know, and I'm living on the top floor. It actually keeps me quite fit. I like living on the top floor, but say I couldn't manage the stairs anymore, you know, I would have to move down here, probably.
Because you've lived in communities most of your adult life, would that be true to say?
Oh yeah, that's true. Many different communities. But I mean, most of us were quite young. But I remember when I lived at Tara Loka, we had one really much older than the rest, which was Ratnashuri.
Yes.
And towards the end of her life, she just because she'd gone deaf, she felt really excluded because she couldn't hear anybody. And, and the rest of the community was functioning the way that we always had, but she couldn't hear and couldn't see very well. And if people didn't put things back where she could find them, then she couldn't find them. And things like that, little practical things. And in the end, I think when she was about 90, she decided she'd move out into sheltered housing.
Yeah.
So, and she hadn't thought of that before. She was going to die at Taraloka, but she decided she wanted to be more independent and not feel so cut off from everybody.
Mm.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's the only community that I know of that had a person that was a lot older.
Yes, I know an example as well. Obviously, I won't name them, but I know of a community like that as well. And there was a kind of an assumption that they would carry on until death, but in fact, it got to a point where the the older community member decided it was best to move out into sheltered accommodation. And actually, it seemed to there's a gentle pressure had built up, and they hadn't spoken about it. I think what I'm heartened to hear is that you've had some conversations already, and you're going to keep open to having more. That community that I'm aware of didn't really talk about it. It was a bit awkward, and in the end, there's a bit of resentment kind of crept in. And it was much better then when the eldest person moved out and got their own place, and that helped those helped lighten the mood for those friendships that were there between them all. Then they did keep in touch very much with the person that moved out. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that happened at Torreloka as well. People did visit her, and there was still a lot of connection between them. But it was her decision to move. She wasn't pushed out by the community, as it were. It was her decision, and she was like 90 or something when she moved, which is pretty incredible, really. A bit like Bunty when he moved. He was pretty old when he moved to Tadistana. Yeah.
So are there other things that you've talked about around this kind of area of health and aging that come to mind? Even that you've
Well, Pamela devised a sheet with details of, age, medical condition, medication that we're taking, whether we've got a will, whether we've got a living will, who our doctors are. I mean, all the sort of personal information that we might need if somebody got really ill, or if you lost your mind and you couldn't make decisions for yourself.
And I'm really pleased to hear you've done that. I like that idea a lot. I'm wondering about next of kin, whether some of you have nominated each other as next of kin as well. I know a community where that happened, and somebody had to go to hospital. Two of the other community members were next of kin, nominated next of kin, and that was very helpful for discussions on care. Have you any of you had that?
No, we haven't done that.
Yeah, we were thinking of power of attorney, which I think would be similar, probably.
We sometimes with our Byron Trust work have cooler groups. I call them cooler groups. A group of people who are looking out for a particular order member, and the order member is also part of that cooler group. So you kind of support each other in caring for that person. I'm appreciating that you've discussed that, those kinds of things about what would happen in resuscitation, wills, funeral wishes, as part of caring for each other, actually.
Well, some of us have got advanced directive and some of us haven't. But it's on that list. So we're all actually trying to fill in the list.
Yeah.
And we've got a folder that we can keep them in. So it'll be easily accessible if any of us needs.
So will you nudge each other if one of you hasn't made a will or an advance directive? Would you is it that's the idea as well, that it's kind of very open and somebody else thinks, gosh, I haven't done that yet?
Well, I think it does help to sort of, having to write it down, because, like I've done an advance directive, I haven't actually got it signed or witnessed.
Yeah.
So you kind of think, oh, I haven't actually done it then.
No.
I think we inspire each other to do it.
Yes, I'm getting that, a sense of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have got mine signed and witnessed.
Uh-huh.
Well, just partly because I witnessed my mother going through a really difficult end. I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want to be resuscitated if I have irrecoverable stroke. Like, she was just kept alive for months artificially, and it wasn't pleasant, not for her or for us or for the hospital probably.
I think as well, what you're bringing up about parents, a lot of us are in that stage of life where we have got aged relatives, parents to look after, and that also brings in the conversation about what is our capacity to look after each other, look after our friends. We have to be realistic about that. Also, I'm liking the fact that you're thinking of each other as family. Yeah.
Well, it feels quite like a family, really. I mean, it's not a real family in a way. We don't have blood connections, but I think the bonds between us are quite strong, bonds of friendship. And the fact that we're able to talk about these things openly, I think I could never talk about this in my actual family. My real family, they were not interested. So,
I think it is important to think about, the implications if more than one of us needed a lot of support.
yeah.
Because, some of us have full-time work, and, there'd come a point where it could just be that it's too much, if you have two people who need a lot of support.
Yes. So one thing about the cooler groups, some of the ones that I'm aware of, they can include long distance friends, because we do tend to move around quite a bit. But long distance friends can be there to say, well, I'll do a phone call once a week to somebody who's living on their own, or stuck in bed for a lot longer than they'd like to be. So we can offer different things in that way, and then if it gets to be quite a lot of pressure, then the cooler can talk to each other as well. Support each other. So I know that's worked quite a lot in the Biorat Trust work. I'm involved in a couple of those coolers myself. Setting them up, and then seeing how they work. They seem to be particularly important for people living on their own, but I do think they could also be relevant for communities as well. Yeah, think about. Well, hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this little interview, and yeah, being the ones to start that conversation up. And we might interview other communities now that we've spoken to you and see what their thoughts are. But I think you're ahead of quite a lot of us in your thinking about this, and your openness and honesty, and that you're willing to talk about it, and your kindly, warm feeling that I'm getting sense of that you have in your community. So that you feel very heartened that there is care there. There is care there between you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.